Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. I can't believe
that. Good time of day, everyone. Welcome to episode number 200 of America's Watching the Footy. I am Benjamin Castle, here alongside my brother Ethan in South San Francisco, California, with the executive producer, Brian Harambe, patrolling the room and watching over us.
I'm disappointed. I wanted to record during my little 24-hour trip to San Diego because it would make for a really fun intro where you say that you're in South San Francisco and I'm in San Diego, and it's like, what the fuck? And instead, we're just here, and we're recording Thursday morning after lists have come out. Now, at this point, I do not know anything about lists other than that Gary Rowan is in. I saw a notification that someone from my fantasy team, and I'm not sure whether it was Classic or Draft, so it could be anything, is out injured. Really, the only thing I know is that Gary Rowan is in, which I would have deduced anyway.
Well,
and I know that the Cats have two changes, one of which would have to be Tanner Broom coming out.
Correct. But there are a lot of other things to hash out. We did talk about a couple other things before. Told you that Clayton Oliver wouldn't be playing because of his hand. A couple other players might be missing, and one definitely will be. Harry Sheasel, Tim English. And I mentioned that there was one debut to be expected.
Liam Reedy.
Yes, the Frio ruck, who honestly should have been in last week, and I contend Frio would have won had he been in over Matt Tapeter.
So, for, I think, actually probably the final time this year, Mad Libs, I don't think next week. I mean, I'm going to 2 baseball games next Wednesday, so coming home off of that, I'll probably be pretty tired.
Yeah, I think this will be the last home and away Mad Libs for the year. We'll see what we do for finals.
Why can't we have Happy Libs?
Check in November. This is starting with just kind of dropping a bomb on you here. Sydney will be without Chad. Wait, I did this in reverse. Fuck, never mind.
Nice job, dumb fuck.
Been a while since we've done this, so let's figure out what we're doing here.
Well, it sounds like if Chad Warner's out, that's another fucking punch to the dick for my fantasy.
That's what you've had then. Check your notification. I like actually opening with that sort of bomb drop, so let's do the rest. Give me a singular noun, please.
Ottoman.
Occupation?
Snake charmer.
All right. How about a body part now?
Uvula.
Yeah, surprised I haven't done that. A plural noun, please.
Onions.
You Bill Raftery?
No, it's just onion.
Yeah, that's definitely not something that Australians will get. Actually, some watch March Madness. Give me a number now, please.
332.
Now a past tense verb.
Dehydrating.
All right. And a noun. Singular.
Imp.
Another occupation.
Rodeo clown.
Hey now, over here. Singular noun.
Ambassador.
I'll actually kind of be okay. Past tense verb.
Disrupted.
Plural noun.
Rwandans.
Okay. Present tense verb.
Hailing.
Hail. I'll take it. Body part.
Appendix.
Have we done that before? I feel like we've done that before.
I don't know. Wait.
Another number now.
11.
Past tense verb, please.
Pulsated.
I like it. Adjective.
Chunky.
A direction.
Outward.
Good enough. And a city.
Deaf Smith County.
That being where?
Texas. It's where all the counties are.
Deaf Smith County?
They named the county after this dude, Deaf Smith.
A partially deaf scout and soldier who served in the Texas Revolution.
Yeah, this was clearly like, fuck, we're really out of people to name places after. Let's, not to be confused with all the other Smiths, it's Deaf Smith County, which I just think is hysterical.
I mean, there are 254 counties in Texas.
Yeah, that's the point. They have a lot of them.
I think this will be our final occupation.
Handkerchief salesman.
I need now a position of leadership or power.
Ombudsman.
I like it.
I don't know if that even associates with any power, and I don't care.
I mean, it's a government position. Does a lot to do with mediation, I think, so I think that's appropriate. Past tense verb.
Waffled.
Now I'm just thinking of how Doc Emmerich would talk about how a puck was waffle boarded away by a goalie.
That's the first thing I thought of as well.
What chaos! Talking about an ice hockey commentator. Present tense verb.
Erect.
Okay, that'll be interesting. Verb ending in ing.
Milking.
2 singular nouns.
Spheroid.
Like a football.
Kinda, yeah. And cabbage.
Now a plural noun.
Mortician.
An animal.
Mongoose.
Past tense verb.
Sniveled.
A city? Let's go with city this time rather than a county.
Wanker's Corner.
Oregon?
Yep.
Where exactly in the state is that?
Somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, I'm sure. It's in a place called Stafford.
It's Clackamas County.
Oh, wow. I thought it would have been like middle of nowhere, Eastern Oregon. It was actually like in the Portland metro area.
Yeah, near West Lynn. Okay. You may pass pretty close to there then. How about a body part finally?
Kneecap.
All right. I liked actually dropping that one on you that Chad's out. So, here we go.
Here we go.
Sydney will be without Chad Warner for Friday night's Ottoman against Essendon, with the star snake charmer ruled out due to a sore uvula. It's actually his calf. The Bombers have made 2 onions of their own for the must-win match, bringing in Sam Wiedemann for his 332nd game of the season, along with Archie Perkins. I'm just seeing Ethan process all these at the same time, and it's fun. Brisbane has dehydrated Eric Hipwood for the grand final imp against Collingwood at the MCG on Saturday, as the rangy rodeo clown has overcome groin soreness that has sidelined him for 2 matches. In other round 23 ambassador selection news, injury-ravaged Carlton has disrupted Lewis Young among 9 new Rwandans in its extended squad. Chankwith Jath will hail another week for Hawthorn as he suffers from appendix tightness. It's the same calf issue that it's been for him. And Fremantle has brought in blank Nathan O'Driscoll for the 11th time in 2024.
Oh, fuck yeah, I'm hard as a rock.
Ethan is grinning right now. Very fucking guy. Even more than Hayden Young?
I mean, Nathan O'Driscoll already was. I don't think anyone ever saw O'Driscoll as, like, obvious stud. Whereas I think people kind of, like, are acknowledging Hayden Young's really fucking good.
The Dockers have pulsated Matt Taverner for their chunky contest against Greater Outward Deaf Smith County at Edgy Stadium. You probably saw that one coming.
Now, I really wasn't thinking about any of that.
Greater Outward Deaf Smith County.
I like it.
With the Giants getting handkerchief salesman Kieran Briggs and Stephen Canelio back from injury. Gold Coast has co-ombudsman Tuke Miller, wrist, back for the first time in 6 weeks to face a Melbourne outfit that has waffled Jake Bowie to replace Clayton Oliver. Adelaide has opted for Lockie Gallant to erect Taylor Walker for Saturday night's showdown, with Port Adelaide milking Todd Marshall with Ryan Burton.
That's about as unlike as possible.
Well, Burton's done a little bit of forward time this year and some more in the past, but Georgiades still isn't good to go. In Saturday night's other spheroid, Geelong has managed veteran Zach Dewey.
I'm okay with this.
For its cabbage against St Kilda. Wait, fuck.
What?
Cabbage when talking about an Irishman. In Sunday's extended Morticians, the Western Monkeys are set to make at least 3 changes, with Alex Keith, Jack McRae, and James O'Donnell all sniveled in the 26-man squad to face North Micers Corner, which is without Harry Sheasel, kneecap. It is in fact his ankle. What surprises you the most other than Chad?
O'Driscoll.
Thought so. Yeah, Nathan O'Driscoll is in for his first game of the year. Sam Wiedemann, first game of the year for Essendon. And 2 confirmed debuts already. Liam Reedy, as expected. And you knew at least one was coming for the Blues. In fact, I think there's probably going to be a second based on the extended squad. The Blues debut is Cooper Lord, their midseason pickup.
Any relation to Ollie or Alistair or any of those?
Not that I have seen, although I have not seen everything.
I mean, you can only have so many lords.
I've seen nothing of the sort. So that's a lot of information right away.
Yeah. I guess now I can just go look at everything.
Yeah.
All right, so Tui and Bruin out. Rowan and I'm going to guess like Nevitt or... Oh, Duncan. Duncan was managed last week, wasn't he? Or no, was he managed a week before that?
Duncan was managed a week before. It is Mitch Nevitt.
I'm okay with that.
I'm very okay with Nevitt being back in because he could fucking tackle.
Mullen, I'm going to guess that's the sub role again. I would have taken him out.
What if he tries to run opposite someone like Sinclair?
I don't think it's that necessary.
These Saints did give Geelong quite the scare.
That was round one. Round one is always weird. And I'm not overlooking the Saints, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Honestly, I've thought very little about this round. I've still been thinking about the last round. So you're going to get to listen to me kind of walk through this whole process. Just listen to my whole thought process in sort of real time, I guess.
Well, we're going to have even more of this in just about exactly 2 months because we are going to do the trade period lockout for you again, and we're actually going to do better this time. But yeah, Essendon and Sydney, we know that Chad Warner is out. However, the Swans are maintaining their Warner quota of 1.
Corey for Chad?
Corey for Chad, and also Lewis Melican's back from his hamstring injury.
That's significant.
Yeah, Robbie Fox has some issues with his kidney, I think, more minor, but from a collision, they don't want to risk that. So Melican will be restored to the back. That'll allow Logan McDonald to go forward again. You knew that was stopgap, like Eric Hipwood playing in the back in Q Clash. And McDonald did not work nearly as well as Hipwood did. His greatest impact was going forward and kicking a goal in the fourth.
As much as I, like most people, am glad Collingwood will not be playing finals this year,
Hey, don't say that yet.
I'm a little bit disappointed with last week's outcome because, again, it would have left much more drama in the hunt for the minor premiership, and it would have left a little bit more intrigue down at those bottom spots as well. So that would have been compelling. Essendon, I mean, we know where they are. I think this week, to me, is really going to be a measurement of how much of a threat the Swans really are. Like, how dangerous are they? Because they looked more like themselves last week, even before the late flurry and comeback. I thought they looked more like themselves, yeah.
James Rowbottom does a lot there. Everybody else profits off him being in the middle and can go a bit more outward.
Obviously, big opportunity for Heaney to have a big game without Warner and increase his chances of winning the Brownlow from 0-0.
Coaches votes, though. Champion Player of the Year. Yeah, that doesn't factor in suspension. Essendon, I am very, very surprised that Dyson Heppel is not getting a farewell game at home.
Is he just not playing?
I guess he said he was retiring at season's end, and they did not include him.
Well, let's see. They finished up at the Gabba.
Don't think he has any Queensland ties in which to speak.
Let's see. I'm just going to put in a quick Twitter search for Heppel. I'm seeing a couple of people mad that Heppel doesn't have a farewell game. Maybe he declined one and is just getting a pregame thing?
I guess. I mean, there was some fanfare for his 250th, few games back.
Mostly it's people mad at Essendon, but there are a couple who think maybe he just said, nah, I don't need that.
Well, then wouldn't you say, though, I'm retiring effective immediately?
Yeah, or maybe, in line with the whole selflessness deal, he's doing it where it's like, I know you're probably not going to use me again, but I want to make myself available for selection, if you actually need me. Even though I think there's totally an argument that he might be in their best 22 or 23 available this week. I don't know if he is, but there's brief pause to consider it at minimum. And considering that you're pretty much done, you're not playing finals at this point. Don't kid yourselves. I really see no reason not to just give him that last game. Again, unless he's adamant, no, don't do this for me.
Well, there's got to be some sort of solution in defense because Nick Cox is out concussed and wasn't the solution to begin with. It was more of a team effort in-game, but at least having Heppel there could provide just an actual magnet. Because I'm thinking Durs was still out, obviously, and he's been able to help out in defense. There's just no one clear solution there other than helping farewell Dyson Heppel.
And you wouldn't think they're going to, like, late change him in. A late in for a farewell game seems highly unlikely. It's, this is just
Ron Scott twin.
But no, it's also something where you give the advance notice just so that people can say goodbye and, to sell tickets and stuff.
Well, these teams met in round 2 at the SCG. The Swans brought the margin out enough in the third quarter. It was a 131-101 win in which the typical cast from the middle had exceptional games. This time out, the Swans are 5.5-point favorites. I'd put that out a little bit. I'm still feeling shaky about how Essendon can match up defensively in some aspects.
I'd put it at 11.5 or so. I mean, maybe Essendon edges their way into being competitive here after what happened last week, but I think they're pretty much finished.
A 1-point win, then a 1-point loss. I don't think it's going to be nearly as close for them this week.
I hope for their sake that they come out and show some fight, because it would be very easy to just be super deflated after last week.
I do look forward to Merritt and Durham and Caldwell matching up against, I guess, would primarily be Heaney and Rowbottom in there, maybe with some help from Parker, and perhaps Golden could move inside a bit as well. Although Golden versus Martin on the wing, that's attractive. Or we'll see how that split works between him and Harry Jones. I love how Jones has reinvented himself this year.
Yeah, he's become like a quality wing player.
Yeah, wing, pushing inward from there. You got plenty of other players who can take the ball up to center wing and then allow Harry to join the forward 50 mix and use his height there. So that's a positive development, and I hope that sticks next year.
A game that once sounded like it was going to be really fun that's now just kind of an unappealing dead rubber. I mean, it's not officially dead, I guess, but it's pining for the Fjords.
The 12th place Suns and 13th place Demons at People First Stadium. These teams have not played in Victoria since 2018.
Is there any scenario where 48 could still be the minimum to get in? I guess looking at who plays who, I don't think any of the teams from 7th through 11th play each other. So I guess theoretically,
I think these two teams are at the very bottom and would officially be eliminated with a loss or even a draw.
Yeah, they'd be eliminated with a loss, a draw, or all three of Hawthorn, Carlton, and the Bulldogs picking up points.
Percentage isn't great for either of them as well, because the Suns are just over 100. They're 8 points over 100, and Melbourne are below 98.
If I wasn't stupid, I would say if either of these teams made finals, I would walk from San Diego to LA. Or actually, you know what? I'd do it in reverse, from LA to San Diego. But I'm not going to, because I'm not stupid, even though we know these teams are both done.
The Demons have a lower percentage than the Saints.
Wow.
Melbourne 97.9, St. Kilda 98.1.
So yeah, they're both 10 and 11, 8:45 p.m., 11:45 Eastern, 1:45 locally. Melbourne have won 11 straight head-to-head, so I guess that's the intrigue here. Can the Suns snap an 11-game head-to-head losing streak? And they'll be playing yet again at Gold Coast. This will be their 5th time in the last 6 meetings there. And they also had one at the Sydney Showground. Last year, Christian Petrarca stood up in a really close, fun game, a 5-point Demons win where Darcy McPherson had a chance to tie late and kicked behind. I don't remember much of that game, but I remember it being fun.
I remember just having good things to talk about in regard to the Suns, like Sean Lemons doing a good job on Bailey Fritsch. Wonder if they'll try that again, because Lemons is still in. There's only one change for the Suns, Tuke Miller in for Alex Sexton. Miller suffered a broken wrist back in round 17. Before that, we were talking about him definitely being the third most important in that midfield mix after Rowell and Anderson, but also the most taggable.
I want to see a better game out of Noah Anderson, because I've been of the belief at times this year that's been much more volume than value. Like, I remember there was one moment last week in the Essendon game where he just, tried an overhead handball for no reason. Like, someone was just spamming buttons on a video game controller. So I'd like to just see, a more determined, focused game out of him.
Yeah, Noah, we like it, but you're not Harry Sheezel. I wouldn't say either of these teams' loan changes are like for like. Although Melbourne did try Clayton Oliver at halfback last week.
Oliver's out. He's got hand, knee, and rib injuries, which maybe, knowing that he's got so many injuries, could help improve his stock as a possible trade candidate this offseason.
It seems more likely he'll stay.
Part of me hopes he stays. Part of me hopes he gets on the market, maybe even look at Geelong. I don't know if at this point.
Geelong's capital is kind of shot, though, and they're already going to be making a trade for somebody who was also hurt this year.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, I don't know if it's been confirmed, but all signs point to Bailey Smith. Even though Clayton Oliver just looks much more like a Geelong player.
Give Bailey Smith a headband.
So Jake Bowie's backing for him. I think he was managed late last week or the week before. I think it was last week.
Laid out with illness along with Tajwa Woden. And
although I thought we knew about Woden sooner.
I think that's right, but both technically laid out just after the initial teams were announced.
Got it. And then we know now that Alex Neil-Bullen has requested a trade home. He might be a candidate to be Melbourne's best and fairest this year between health and performance, especially versus expectation. I mean, I would think it's still going to be Gawn, but
it's definitely Max Gawn, but Neil-Bullen could be top 3 with ease.
He's definitely the player, like expectation versus reality, who has impressed me the most on this team this year.
And I'm very glad that they're still selecting him because a number of times in the past when players have requested trades, they've just been dropped. But Neil-Bullen has given hell of a lot for the club over this past decade, key to their flag in 2021, and yeah, still one of their most important players, especially given the midfield outs. Looks like right now the Crows are more favored to land him.
Also, just makes sense off of who has more of a need there.
And if you're looking for another tagging option and maybe a mentor figure to Hugh Bond in that respect, that could really work because Neil-Bullen's tag jobs this year have been all right. The potentially mighty Suns are favored by 16.5. You go, Gold Coast. Mac Andrew embarrassed the club that should have had you before they changed the academy rules for like 3 years.
I like that Melbourne fans are mad about that. Not that it's like a good thing that it happened, but that they appreciate Mac Andrew. That's a good thing. Everyone should appreciate Mac Andrew. I think I've already made my decision, but I kind of deem this game as the battle to be my second favorite team, as GWS hosts Freo at Empty Stadium.
Empty Stadium?
It's been a nickname given by other people. I can't say I was first on that. But just look at the changes here. I'm liking what both teams are doing. This will be another 8:45 p.m. here because we know that an Australian audience only cares about the time on the west coast of the United States. It'll be 11:45 p.m. on the East Coast, which is important because it's on FS2. It'll be 1:45 locally and for Freo fans out west. And I guess if there are any GWS fans in the West or just people who want to watch a fun game with major finals implications, 11:45 a.m. This is quite possibly the most important game of the round.
I can think of some GWS fans out west, the Canelio family.
Oh.
He's from Joondalup.
This has to be the most important game of the round, right?
Has to be because of how important each team is. I mean, we were talking about
the game has top 4 implications. It has top 8 implications. There's a scenario where with a loss, Freo could be out of it before they even play their final game, which is the final game of the home and away season.
Really, everything revolves around the Giants, Dockers, and Bulldogs to an extent. But these two teams are the most important in terms of impact.
And also sort of north, believe it or not.
Yeah, but these two teams directly are the most impactful in terms of sorting out the entire finals mix. The third place Giants, after their comeback win at the Gabba, Brisbane have lost 4 games at home this year,
and still look like one of the most dangerous teams.
And the 6th place Dockers, coming off their loss to the Cats. These teams have played 3 times at the Showground, and the Giants have won all 3. So a chance for history there. They played at the Showground last year, round 14, a 70-point Giants win. That was when there was just some ugly Freo ball in general. I wouldn't say quite Freeze-mantle, but just thoroughly outdone by Canelio and Kelly in the middle. Josh Kelly kicked 3 in that game. I remember that.
That gives me a little big picture perspective.
How so?
It reminds me that if you told me now that this is where Freo would be, you told me this 2 years ago, I'd say, I would have thought they would have been maybe a spot or 2 higher, maybe a top 4 candidate. And if you had told me last year that they'd be back in this spot, I'd say, wow, good. They got their shit together in 2023 was an aberration. So, yeah, are they still a couple of steps behind where maybe like optimistic 2022 full flag mantle believer Ethan would have said? Yes, but, they kind of played the long game rather than the short game with a couple of their moves. And while I would say they are the most likely of the quartet to miss out between them, the Hawks, the Blues, and the Dogs, I still just big picture, I am much happier with where this team is than I was at this time a year ago.
And remember what they're still missing. Darcy, Tracy, Pierce. So that's definitely to be considered there. That's really why Liam Reedy is in, particularly the combination Darcy and Tracy being. I said last week that he should have been in over Taverner to begin with. Rookie selection in 2022 from Frankston, who's definitely done good time for Peel Thunder. I think he had 54 hitouts in a recent game. And yeah, Nathan O'Driscoll on the wing.
I also love the moves the Giants are making this week.
Not a huge fan, actually, of dropping Max Grzewski after he had a good defensive forward job in the end on Harris Andrews.
Who would he do that on this week? Without Alex Pierce, I really don't see a place for that.
I mean, that kind of forces Luke Ryan into some more one-on-one spots, and he isn't the greatest at that already, so it could be an opportunity for Grzewski to step up there, or he could directly challenge Josh Draper or Brendan Cox. There's potential all over there. I mean, Draper hasn't dealt with that sort of one-on-one challenge before.
I just don't think that's entirely necessary, and I think it makes more sense to go with best available, and I definitely think Harvey Thomas was due for a week. O'Halloran is a little tough to miss out, but I like this altogether.
O'Halloran for Cornelio seemed obvious for me just because of how he's been used over the past couple years. You think to last year's finals, and that was the case also. And yeah, Kieran Briggs is a massive in, physically and figuratively.
I mean, it's funny, he's not that tall, but he's a big guy.
He's a presence, and against Jackson and Reedy, that'll be a tough matchup.
Giants favored by 12.5. I put this more like 9.5. Maybe, I get the feeling Luke Jackson plays better than he did last week, and I think that at least gives Frio a chance. Do they win? I don't know. Do they have a chance? Yeah.
It's been 20 rounds since we've had a grand final rematch. Time for it to actually be at the G. These teams have not played a home and away game at the G in 7.5 seasons.
Does that merit a Wowie?
Well, because it involves one of BT's former teams, absolutely. You knew that Victorian meetings would be less common for them to begin with because of the Holy Thursday tradition, and that is definitely going to impact the fixturing of Gather Round next year because Easter is later. I believe Gather Round is right before Easter next year. So you'd think then Collingwood and Brisbane would be Thursday and Friday slots.
I guess because a Brisbane loss would be to Geelong's benefit, I should be glad they're playing this at the G instead of Marvel, where Brisbane are generally gods, except for against Hawthorn. But at the same time, this year's been weird, so maybe none of this matters. Also, Collingwood's had more trouble in their home games at Marvel.
And they won, actually, at the Gabba. That was a 20-point win where they were held goalless in the second quarter, then scored 5-1 in the third and largely controlled things from there. The Lions kicked 10-12, had plenty of opportunities, but I remember that was a better defensive job by Billy Frampton against Joe Danaher. And Frampton is staying in.
Good.
Joe Richards, meanwhile, after his, 1-minute cameo, is out. And I'm wondering if maybe they're doing that as sort of retribution for him answering calls from Port Adelaide.
That doesn't seem like a Craig McRae thing. Maybe it's from someone else, but definitely doesn't seem like a McRae thing.
Well, he is getting attention from Port. Would be a nice second small forward to have. It's Will Parker in for Richards to help shore up the defensive side of things, and I like what Parker did against Richmond.
I'd rather have Richards in, but sure, not going to change much about how I feel.
Brisbane, I think one of the changes was obvious and the other less so.
Eric Hipwood back in. That was obvious. The other one, Harry Sharp playing his how manyth game? Manyth. That's a word now.
This will be his 15th over 4 years and his first since being a sub in the loss to Hawthorn.
Jackson Pryor comes out. Okay, fine. And Henry Smith, which is unfortunate because I think he had started to show some positive signs.
Just really no place for him if you've got Hipwood back in there too. And this isn't like you're going to be managing anybody. You're in 5th Brisbane. Legitimate danger.
Not of missing finals.
But missing the double chance.
which we kind of just expect this team to be a double chance damn near every year at this point.
Well, in the past 5 years, they've had the double chance, I believe, 4 times.
And the one they didn't was pretty funny.
Oh, yeah. Maybe give Joe Danaher some attention, what Collingwood did last time, and I imagine they'll try to repeat that matchup. I could totally see Mason Cox just trying to rile up Harris Andrews.
Ooh, that would be fun. I just want to know, when he gets all into stuff, like, what does he actually say? Like, what does he say to guys after a goal?
Well, actually, do you think that's the move there? Or do you do the obvious and have the forward line go up against the best line?
Ooh, that would be spicy.
Remember, Dan McStay was not in the grand final last year. Did his knee?
Right.
That'll add some spice. Line's still 9.5-point favorites?
Sounds accurate. If it wasn't for, like, having full trust in, like, the mentality of this Collingwood team, I would say after last week they could totally be deflated and just get smacked, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they win, but I don't question them being competitive. I don't think this is going to look like the Hawthorn game again. I think that was a one.
Well, you're also talking about how the Lions could just kind of have the bottom fall out for a game. Do you think that was more what the fourth quarter was last week? Or do they still have that potential in them to just kind of give out?
I think that was last week. I mean, maybe it could happen again.
I'm glad this is a standalone, though.
Yeah, a Collingwood win last week would have made it significantly spicier.
However, the entire nation at once being able to watch Collingwood's finals hopes potentially end.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Multiple nations. Many nations.
Unfortunately, I am very adamant about the best rivalry in the league getting more standalone time. We had that once this year, but don't have that a second time. I know Ethan's particularly unhappy about that because of what that conflict is. We'll talk about that after the break.
You just American Idol us.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
Welcome back. We're Americans Watching the Footy. We're on Twitter at Americans Footy. I'm on Twitter at Castle Media.
I'm at Benjamin HK01, and the executive producer is just quietly watching us right now. Or actually, not even watching it, just turned away, trusting us. He's on Instagram at Cat Named Brian. He has been a very good boy, and I think I'm a good cat uncle.
We are also on Instagram and YouTube at Americans Footy, and we're going to get back previewing this. It's hard to believe it's already round 23. You know, this was a little baby season not long ago. I remember when I was breastfeeding it.
Does season 2024 want the biddy? I was talking before the break, though, about how this Saturday night overlap is definitely not to your liking.
No. If the overlap didn't involve Geelong and you had, I don't know, let's see, Bulldogs and North, yeah, since that's the first game Sunday, I'd be like, okay.
But when it involves Geelong, and that means you can't watch Showdown 56 live, well, you can on FS2, but it will be
on the big screen in the background.
Meanwhile, this will be the center of, I imagine, most of the footy world's attention, given it's Showdown and anything can happen, and also Porter in second. What?
Yeah.
7 p.m. local time in Adelaide, so I guess about 6:59 you'll hear Never Tear Us Apart.
Well, no, because I think usually bounce ends up being more like 7:02.
I guess. But Never Tear Us Apart at night is the important thing.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to have a daytime Showdown anytime soon.
This should be, once again, a standalone game, and it's a shame it's not. Especially because the one that we actually did get as a standalone game earlier this year ended up kind of sucking.
That's just because Port could not kick straight for the life of them.
I didn't think they played well altogether.
Wall X scored by 9 points, but they were without a leader for that game, and it showed. It's not like you can make Asafa Radicalea or Brandon Zerk-Thatcher your number one defender. They were signed to be part of the solution, not the solution in and of themselves. We thought another defender should have gotten the medal honors in that game, and because he's a defender, he did not. It went to Jake Saligo, but shout out Josh Worrell. Jake Saligo was good. He was the best midfielder, but the award doesn't just have to be, the best midfielder award. I'm not sure about that. Should have been Riley Philthorpe once last year, and it went to Dawson. I mean, Dawson's something of a midfielder, but Philthorpe isn't, and he should have gotten it as the which is why it's pretty much the best midfielder award. I know you were praising Worrell's defensive job against the Bulldogs, so we'll see how that carries through. And that game against Geelong, he wasn't bad, but you could tell he was getting back up to speed, and now he looks pretty locked in. One change for the visiting Crows, and it will definitely be a visiting atmosphere because of how Showdown is. Lockie Gallant in for Taylor Walker. We mentioned that earlier. Gallant coming off an 8-goal performance in the twos last week. Very obvious change, and we'll see how he can factor into plans next year and beyond, with Walker likely to stay on. Don't worry about if this eye injury ends Walker's season. Will it mean that's the end of him with the Crows? All evidence points to him staying there for next year. Port's change this week is a less logical and more interesting one, I guess. I mean, we knew that Todd Marshall was coming out because he was concussed, but Ryan Burton. I mean, we've seen Burton's ability to swing forward, so maybe he's not the most logical one in there. Let's see, last week he did kick 1-2 for Port against the Eagles. So not completely unheard of, but Charlie Dixon and Jeremy Finlayson will have to do heavier lifting, obviously. Port favored by 12.5. Now, the Crows have won 4 of the last 5 showdowns, including 3 in a row. And I had thought last week, all right, the Crows, I just thought they were going to keel over. Yeah, and they put up a pretty inspired performance. I feel very confident that this will not just be like an ordinary game where Port ends up being the better team by about 3 goals. I think this is either going to be a thriller or this week will be the week that the Crows just kind of check out, which, the odds of them checking out in a showdown seem unlikely, but they could just end up collapsing under the weight of everything. And Port, I get the feeling Port are just going to come out and say, we're not fucking losing to these guys again. Like, we lost to them. They were playing the highlights of training the entire next week. We're not losing in the bars again. Top pick for the showdown medal would probably be the horny one. Him or Butters. Given his form, I would say Horn Francis would be most likely. But now watch this be the time that they give it to somebody who isn't a midfielder. Yeah, Port favored by 12.5. If I had to pick, I would expect them to... God, this is tough. 5 goals. But who wins on aggregate? Crows. I see it being like a 26-27 point margin because even as Port work it out, I see Adelaide getting a couple back late. Riley Philthorpe without his beard, by the way, will not sit well with me. I mean, I think I like the idea of him keeping it trimmed a little. He's totally shaving it for charity. I'm impressed that it was long enough already to do that. I mean, it was getting towards some Joe Thornton type stuff. Or has it not happened yet, and will it be later this week? I don't know. Saints and Geelong go right up against Showdown 56. Again, that's 7:30 p.m. local, so for Americans, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. This is a pretty common Marvel Stadium matchup, including the days when Geelong would have some home games there. But they played in front of over 39,000 at Cardinia Park with the full Joel Selwood stand in round 1. That was the highest attendance at the venue in 43 years. And it was a really entertaining 9-goal fourth quarter in which Patrick Dangerfield sealed it with a goal that none of his teammates thought he could kick. Yeah, I believe it was a 1 or 2 point lead, and then he blasted it from 50 to win it. Ollie Dempsey kicked 3-5. I really liked Liam Henry in his Saints debut along the wing and kind of as one of the speed guys that connected the back to the front. Hopefully we'll see more of that from him next year. I always thought of him kind of playing opposite Sinclair. Angus McLennan, after getting beaten up a bunch last week, is out, but is he just omitted? That is an omission. It does get Hugo Garcia back in. On Geelong's side, as we mentioned, Mitch Nevin and Gary Rowan in for Tanner Bruin and Zach Toohey. Ted Closey might have had a chance to get in once Bryn got concussed, but he also got concussed, so that doesn't happen.
Cats favored by 11.5.
I like Nevitt being in, coming off, I believe, a career-high 32 touches in the VFL, so he certainly put in the work there.
And I also just thought it was tough for him to get omitted in the first place a couple weeks ago after, he had one good game and then one bit of a down game, and seemed like just pretty quick hook.
Beyond that side of things, is just he can actually tackle, and this is a team that desperately needs better tacklers and better tackling as a whole. That needs to be a primary focus over the summer.
Needs to be a primary focus now. As much as I don't like playing the Saints, and there's been a habit of splitting the season series with them because there have been a lot of double ups, I feel like this will just be like a slightly more comfortable win than last time, like by about 3 goals. Something like, the last one was 76-68, something like 76-58.
You think the Saints are only going to score 58 points?
Wouldn't shock me. I think the Cats are due to face a super inaccurate opponent. Rio had a little of that last week, but also hit some tricky ones. The key is to shutting down Tim Membry, right? I mean, that's kind of the key to everyone playing against the Saints right now.
Shut down Membry and do your best against Rowe and Marshall. I'd like to see Blitzov just kind of following Marshall around.
I am a little surprised that Reece Stanley is still in for this game. I would have managed him for this. That does concern me, the idea of Stanley versus Marshall.
I think more it's you can keep Stanley in the ruck and then have Blitzovs follow him elsewhere.
Well, the other thing that you could do is, I hope it doesn't come to this, you sub Stanley out and then Blitzovs takes him full time. Surprised that O'Sheen Mullen's still in. I would guess he's going to be the sub again. I would have rather, there are a few other guys I would like to see get a shot there.
I could see Ollie Henry being the sub or Gary Rowe, just kind of with how the two of them seem a little mutually exclusive. But I think Stanley just going in seems like the optimal sub-out choice if all goes to plan.
I mean, if all goes according to plan, you just sub out like Jeremy Camry because you're up by 60.
I mean, I don't think you go in expecting to use a victory cigar sub.
You never do.
Besides, there have been fewer gigantic blowouts this year, really. There's been 2 triple-digit wins. 2 triple-digit wins, and neither of them have involved West Coast.
What will involve West Coast is another set of Sunday games, because they always play Sunday. And in fact, I think this is a very Sunday of games, because the bottom 3 are all playing. Although I am intrigued by the Dogs hosting North.
And an early Sunday game on FS2 as it stands. So 11:10 Eastern, 8:10 Pacific for Americans, 1:10 p.m. local at Marvel Stadium, where these teams have always met from 2010 onward, the 23rd straight meeting there. The Bulldogs looking to extend their head-to-head streak to 7. These teams met actually just back in round 16. That was the first game in which Rory Lobb was sent back. The Bulldogs won by 17, but led by 31 at three-quarter time. The result wasn't really in doubt, and had either Marcus Montebelli kicked accurately or Jamari Ugle-Hagan marked anything, it could have gotten extremely ugly. There was a clear skill gap there. There's a key out going each way for this game, though, so we'll see how things go. Tim English being out will just add to Tristan Jerry's superiority in the ruck. English hasn't been a great hit-out guy to begin with. I guess then this would have Sam Darcy being the primary ruckman. He is listed as the ruckman.
Yeah, then you can throw Rory Lobb in for some hit-outs as well, and god damn it, they actually did it. 9 tackles wasn't enough. Riley Garcia omitted.
It's such a Bulldogs move.
I shouldn't be surprised. I called it, and I'm still surprised.
We know there's 2 more changes to be made, with Garcia and Caulfield out, as well as English. My thought would be Harvey Gallagher and Jack McRae.
Yeah, those would be the most likely, but again, look at what we're dealing with. I think James O'Donnell ends up getting back in, knowing how these things work. Caulfield would have been a cool story, but just didn't play at a high enough level.
I'm thinking Frazier is in for Caulfield, though, to begin with.
Well, that's possible.
So then the question would be how to replace more of Garcia, and with McRae's monster games in the 2s, that would feel more natural. And with English out, you could really go any which way.
I can't imagine Alex Keith gets it. I think he's the least likely off the extended bunch, just because this team has so many talls.
Former cricketer Alex Keith.
For North, 100th game for Bailey Scott, who, along with Tom Powell, say those are the 2 that have kind of like emerged as that next tier of guys. Zach Fisher gets back in, as does Dylan Stevens. Hopefully this time Stevens just like rushes a behind, because he kind of had that issue in Tasmania a few weeks ago, if you remember.
He did, Aiden Core did. I think it was collectively between them. Core is one of the derpier players for North, but when he's on, the defense tends to be on as well. It's a little barometric.
Callan Dawson on the extended bench,
As is George Wardlaw.
Unfortunately, Harry Sheasel will be out with that ankle injury, which I think is the biggest reason the Dogs are favored by 44.5.
I don't know if it's going to be that much closer.
But 44.5 is a lot, even with no Sheasel.
We'll see how much North can take advantage of Jerry's ruck work, because that's really been the determining factor for a lot of their success this year. Jerry has done his part game in and game out, and it's been more about whether or not those hitouts have been converted into something meaningful. If Powell and Scott can have some more deliberate kicks, then I think they can profit off that. And if Simpkin can have more deliberate kicks too, because Simpkin had some interesting choices last week, like that soccer kick where North could have easily just grinded the last minute plus out after the JB Cripps goal. I mean, I'm thankful that he soccered it.
Back on July 28th, Rudy Edsall tweeted, "That's the first time the Dogs have won 3 or more games in a row since round 6 to 10 last year. Beat Carleton in away wins over the Cats and Swans too. Have they finally figured out that they're good, or is this just a prelude to maddening losses to Adelaide and Newark?"
Halfway there.
If they didn't have the history that they have, I would say, yeah, they're going to bounce back. Last week was a stinker. All is well. Donuts are plentiful.
So are the Spuds clubs.
So, like, the logical thing here would be comfortable Bulldogs win. And I mean, there's a chance they really put it on, like, triple digits. And there's a legit chance they lose this game as well.
The inner machinations of Luke Beveridge's mind are an enigma. The Bulldogs are an enigma. We go over this every week. 44.5 is also the line in the middle Sunday game. Hawthorn and Richmond at the G, which is where they were 9 weeks ago, and 92,311 people showed up to celebrate the now retired Dustin Martin.
I get the feeling it's going to be maybe 60. We'll see how much the Hawthorn fans really turn out. I don't think there's too much incentive for Richmond fans to turn out for this one.
This is now their worst season ever in terms of losses. They had never lost 19 games in a season before. These teams play at the MCG every time. This will be the 24th straight meeting there, and only one of those was a final. The Tigers had done all right for themselves head-to-head in recent times until round 14, where, aside from Dusty kicking the opening goal, it was all Hawks. They won by 8 goals. Nearly doubled them up. Sicily was everywhere in defense. Bobby Urchol kicked 4-1.
Our polished turd from that game was Tim Taranto, who basically he had no help. He was actually really good.
It seems to be the case for Richmond a lot this year, just like one of Taranto, Popper, or potential future son Daniel Rioli just goes off.
Or Nick Glostone, maybe, although that was more early season. He's still been solid, but not like that. Or Chobin and Curvis.
But usually it's good 1 or 2 players, little help from the supporting cast. And Richmond might not have many changes this week. You do see Jack Ross back in the extended squad, so I imagine he'd get in. He suffered a stress fracture in his foot back in round 4 and figures to be part of that midfield to half forward mix for this next Tigers era. So glad that he will get another opportunity in all likelihood.
Hawthorn, we don't have any changes known either. Chankwath Jaff extended through 2027, but still out with the calf injury this week. Assuming both Harry Morrison and Jack Scrimshaw are in, they'll each play their 100th game. Morrison a late in last week, and maybe the best game by a late in this season. I can't think of any better. The extended bench for the Hawks includes Finn McGuinness, Jai Sarong, and Josh Ward.
I see no pressing reason to include either of those. I mean, you still need to win these 2 games, in which you'll be obviously favored, in order to make finals. Hawthorn control their destiny, which is remarkable to say.
You know, there's something I don't like about this matchup, and it's just a tough watch visually.
Too much yellow.
Too much yellow, different shades of yellow, black and brown. It's just, look, the colors don't mesh very well.
Eagles and Blues to finish off the round out west, and because of the Blues carnage, last I checked, West Coast were favored by 1.5, which is 50% more than you get just for having a crack.
You get a point just for having a crack.
Tipping, only 55% currently have the Blues, which I still have to lean Carlton here, but I am much more intrigued by this game than I ever thought I would be. You know, it sucks that players are hurt, but it is cool that I can look at this game with intrigue beyond, well, teams struggle traveling out to Perth, and we know the Eagles play better at home.
Well, considering the 9 new names listed in the extended 26-man squad, pretty much anything is possible. We already know that Cooper Lord will be in. Mid-season draft pickup. You'll see a lot of numbers out there for the Blues potentially that you don't recognize. And Lord,
I'm definitely going to have to watch this game with a tab open on their roster.
Yeah, Lord wears 36. We also know that Jackson Bids will be getting his first game in the 22. He had one game as a sub earlier this year and then got immediately dropped. He is number 25.
Does anyone call him Professor?
Maybe they call him Bert. It's a Cuthbert. You got to go like real tangential, like Reg for Zach Toohey.
Yeah. Ooh, actually, I'm going to take it another level from Cuthbert. Chesler.
Very minor baseball name.
Yes.
Chesler Cuthbert.
Yeah, that's his nickname. I'm calling him Chesler. Chesler Bibbs.
Confusing against a team that has Chesser on their list, but he won't be factoring in. But in terms of players to look out for, potentially for the Blues, should also mention Lewis Young will find his way back in, listed at halfback, could have some second ruck time as well. I know he's being looked at by some teams in that regard, because he hasn't been getting much time these past couple of years. But so many other names to look out for the Blues. Corey Durden just came back on managed minutes from an injury in the VFL, but he could come in as a small forward.
Do I think he's a great player? No, but if he's a guy that you're able to pull in when you lose your 2 top forwards, that's a pretty good situation to be in. And while this team has obviously had an insane amount of injuries, they have interesting depth pieces. It's just a lot of them are frustrating because it's these guys that show flashes, and then you think, here's a chance to take it and run, and then they don't.
You can somewhat think of that for Jack Carroll as well. I would imagine the Eagles go after him because he's out of contract and is from the West. I think he's from Geraldton. He could definitely come into that midfield mix there. But other numbers you might see out on the Oval. You could see 41 because key defender Dominic Akwe is part of the mix there. Note how he spells Dominic. It's more like demonic.
I hadn't noticed that before.
He's the first ever player to join the AFL list from their academy. So that would be cool to see him get in there. If he's a good enough mover like I think he is, then maybe that can help. Though Bids could get some of that task too. Harry Lemmy was a pick in the later part of the 2022 draft and could be a forward solution with Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay both out. Though I would wonder if Ashton Moyer could also get an opportunity. I remember we were talking about Moyer a bit after the scratch match that the Blues played against Geelong. And then Billy Wilson looks like he could use a thin headband. Seriously, he just looks like a cat.
Yeah, he looks like he should be related to Ollie Dempsey.
There's some players where you look at him just like, yeah, a headband would fit him. He's one of them. Miles Bergman is another. And Bergman, I know, is from Victoria and think about going home after 2025. So keep that on your radar. There are so many opportunities for basically anything to happen here regarding the Blues. So how much can West Coast punish? And can they hold their own in the middle? Because if they can get enough at the source, then they can use their speed elsewhere. The Blues have had a problem with speed from the middle. Cripps and Kennedy aren't all that fast, and they'll have to do some real heavy lifting in this game. The Eagles will be celebrating Andrew Gaff's career. This will be his final game, and that'll get him life membership for the league. It'll be number 250 overall for Jamie Cripps as well. Never any, league or team honors for him, but always been an important piece there in terms of secondary or tertiary scoring outside of the key forward figures. Harry Edwards is returning from concussion. He's going to be signing on to stay at the club for a few more years, which is big considering they're pretty much guaranteed to lose Tom Barris at this point. Break out your blue eagle head jumpers to celebrate. You do not remember this at all, Ethan?
Nope.
Game against the Lions a year or two ago, one of those games at the GABA.
If I look it up, though, I see multiple photos right away. I don't know how this happened. Is that supposed to be like a practice jumper or something?
I think it was a printing error. I've never seen that be a practice jumper. Kind of like it, though. Kind of dig it.
I prefer the gold one.
With Edwards coming in, I would assume Alex Witherden would go out, but these team decisions have confounded me. I'm just hoping Zane True, Clay Hall, and Ryan Merrick all stay in. And I imagine they will. Gaff and Merrick opposite each other on wings. True's been important with the pressure. And he's been able to stand up to some big midfield tasks before, I think back to round 23 last year. I go into this game encouraged and just curious. What could the Blues show that'll interest me in their development beyond the best 26 or 27 that we've seen for a lot of this year?
This could also be a game that a lot of other teams' list managers look at, like knowing realistically the odds of Carlton ever having an injury situation quite like this again are so slim. So it's going to be an audition for a lot of guys who aren't just auditioning for spots in Carlton's team, but potentially for other clubs in coming years.
Ethan, who is your main character pick for round 23?
Diocletian.
How does that fit?
I don't know.
Okay, seriously though.
That's my guess. I'm going with Diocletian. He was Roman Emperor from 284 to 305.
I am so confused. What does Diocletian have to do with anything?
Nothing.
So your main character is nobody?
No. Diocletian was definitely an actual person.
He was. I'm not going to deny that. My main character pick for this week, let's go nice and simple here. Joe Danaher. Either he gets super frustrated with having to deal with Frampton more and lashes out, or he breaks through and is a big part of the Lions win. I could see some big storylines around Danaher for these last couple weeks between trying to break through in this grand final rematch and then playing against his old club next week. But that seems like a fair, reasonable pick. I'm not going to consider it like a rolling pick, but I'm just going to keep a close eye on Joe this week. And I hope Lions fans show up and sing the goal songs like they've done at a couple games before, particularly Q Clash.
You'll be able to get all of our takes of ranging temperatures on Twitter at Americans Footy. I'm at Castle Media.
I'm at Benjamin HK01.
My son, the executive producer, is on Instagram at Cat Named Brian. We are also on Instagram at Americans Footy.
Hey, where the fuck are y'all to chair us?
Yeah, 200 episodes. I think that deserves a chairing off.
Yeah, you know what? We said 250 was a good starting point last time.
I don't care. I want to get chaired off. Considering the distance we podcast from, I think just that alone, I think there's enough of like an added degree of difficulty that it's worth the recognition. Plus, converting into the metric system, and it's probably closer to 300.